and welcome to the Amazon Show with me, Chris Stafford. This is the show where we tell the stories of female adventurers around the world. And my guest on this episode is Elise Wortley, who is an English woman on a mission, not as a modern-day explorer, but as an authentic Amazon from centuries past. Elise is currently planning her third journey, following in the footsteps of famous women who conquered mountains and oceans from Scotland to the Himalayas. And what makes her journeys different is that she's dressed and equipped in authentic clothing of that period, which so far has been back to the early 1900s. This includes heavy, long woolen coats, leather shoes, and a wooden backpack, none of which makes for easy going across difficult terrain and in challenging weather conditions. And there's also altitude sickness to cope with too. And yet none of these adversities have deterred Elise, who was first inspired by reading about Alexandra David Neal, who climbed the Himalayas, and Nan Shepherd, who explored the Cairngorm Mountains in Scotland. Her next adventure begins in April 2022, when she travels to Iran to retrace the exploits of Freya Stark on her incredible journey to the valleys of the Assassins. While all these women made history in their time, Elise is also making history of her own, inspired by her sheroes. So, Lisa, welcome to the program. You are literally following in the footsteps of some of these intrepid women that have gone before you in previous centuries even. Do you feel that you're making history yourself in a different way?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I always think, I'm more highlighting these women who have gone before us and kind of it's their journey. But I guess I am sort of the first person to recreate their journeys with what they had. And I think kind of today it's really interesting to see the contrast between, all the stuff we have now where people, like lightweight jackets and waterproof stuff compared to what these women had. And actually, for me, it kind of shows, how amazing their journeys were and the difficulties that they had to face. So I guess in a way I'm making history, but I always say, it's all about these women. It's almost not about me. I'm just kind of raising their voices and their stories. But at the time, a lot of them, they were never taken as seriously as their male counterparts. So that's kind of part of the project, kind of raising their voices and making their history heard.
Yes, because as you say, it would have been a social challenge in of itself, what they were doing back then. And, women just didn't break outside the box, did they? Socially, a challenge for them. These were very brave women, weren't they? And tell us how you first discovered them and decided that this was going to be a mission in life.
Yeah, and I think that, over the years, I've sort of wondered, why am I so into these women? Like, why do they capture my imagination so much? And I think it's like you say, it was just their sheer bravery and their sort of want for a different life, where they must have been so brave to, turn around to society at the time and say, I don't want to stay at home, I don't want to have this life, and then just go off to a place, that they've never seen. Because they didn't have, internet or anything that we have today. So some of them might have only seen one photograph of the place they were going. So it really captured my imagination. And I found Alexandra David Neal's book. She's one of probably the more famous, I'd say, female explorers from back in the day. And I read her book when I was 16. I kind of stumbled across it accidentally. And it just really captured my imagination. I mean, very quickly summarizing the book, she traveled for 14 years across Asia, trying to get into Lhasa, which is the capital of Tibet, just to find these ancient Buddhist doctrines. But she just has this incredible journey along the way. She was the first Western woman to meet the Dalai Lama and stays in a cave for 2 years learning to meditate. And it's just the way she writes about it as well. It's just so beautiful, and it just completely captured my imagination. And once I'd sort of found her, I started researching, and there are just so many women like her who kind of did these amazing things and had really interesting, different lives. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to do, I guess, is to, sort of bring their stories back to life and spread the word about them, because not actually that many people know about them.
Now, before you started on this mission, were you, did you have an adventurous spirit? Were you sporty?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I've always been into running. I've always loved running. I kind of grew up in the countryside in Essex. So I've always been like an outdoor person, always loved the outdoor space. And then lucky when I was younger that I kind of got to go on holidays and stuff. So I always loved traveling. And I'd always wanted to go to the Himalayas. Like they'd always captured my imagination, those mountains, because obviously you don't see mountains like that growing up in the UK. So yeah, I'd always kind of had a bit of an adventure spirit, but I do actually think, reading about these women kind of pushed me more to kind of be more adventurous.
So how did you map out those routes then, and how did you prepare when you wanted to recreate their journey?
Yeah, it was tough. So it's interesting because obviously a lot of places change names, and especially from when Alexandra wrote about Tibet, all the names have now become Chinese names. So it's really, really hard to kind of pin together her route. So basically I just go back to the old school and read all their notes, read their journals, read their books, and pretty much just piece together, the same with the clothing, piece together what they, where they went and what they had. And actually it's quite difficult because back then, obviously, it was hard for them to be taken seriously as writers, let alone explorers. And so they'd never mention, what they were really wearing or how they felt, if they felt scared or that kind of thing. So it took a lot of research into sort of women. So for example, in sort of 1910, when Alexandra David Neal was going, she doesn't write about, what she would have worn under her coat or things like that. So I had to do a lot of research into sort of the time and the eras, which was really interesting. And then that's kind of just how I pieced together the journey, just by reading their letters and that sort of thing. And then trying to make it work on Google Maps for today.
But so you had to take printed maps, I presume, because that's all they had. Cartography.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's really cool, this next trip I'm doing, actually, which is Freya Stark. She actually, the area we're going to, she mapped it out. She was the first sort of Western person to draw the maps of the area for the Royal Geographical Society. So we actually have copies of her original maps that she drew. And interesting that they're actually really, really accurate. Obviously, they're not perfect, because if you kind of compare them to modern day maps, you can see. But to be fair, just one woman on foot, drawing that back then, it's really impressive. So yeah, it's really interesting to see sort of how the places and how the towns and things that they visit have grown as well, and that sort of thing, just comparing it to the last 100 years.
Did you ever get lost?
Well, I always have local guides with me, so that's another big part of the trip. And the trip that I do is to find female guides in sort of areas that I go to. I definitely did in Scotland, because that was one, I was just on my own for that one, like Nan Shepherd would have been. So I literally just wandered and wandered through the Cairngorms for sort of nearly 3 weeks just on my own. And it was actually quite nice to be lost there, because you kind of know it's safe, and you can I could always sort of find my way back. So, so a bit of help from other people, and I tend not to get too lost.
Well, I want to talk about your team, and obviously these sort of things take a village to carry out and travel to the extent that you're doing. But just go back to the clothing, if we can, yes, because that in itself was a challenge to mimic what they wore. Where did you find the clothing? Did you have to go to theatre costumers? Yeah,
it's really interesting, because as you so Alexandra David Neal was sort of 1910, and that was really hard to find anything still around from that era. So I managed to sort of find the Yakwal coat, but only in India. It was a traditional coat that she wore. So someone I know who lived there actually knew that these coats still existed. So she managed to pick me up that one. But then as you go to kind of 1930, so when I did the Nan Shepherd trip, there's a lot more things there. Like there's a lot more stuff still around. So it is easier to find, sort of traditional tweed jackets and the traditional leather boots and that sort of thing. So it's a bit of both, really, just piecing them together and trying to find them on eBay or sort of old vintage shops. And for this next one, I'm actually getting the outfit specially made. So I just study lots of photographs of what they would have worn, when they were on their journeys. And then I just try and recreate it that way, basically, and kind of see what they wrote about in the book. So yeah, for this one, I'm actually making it all myself.
Well, you told me before that you're an illustrator, so has that helped you in your graphic, the graphic detail that you need, and to imagine the costumes and how this would have felt, as a woman?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, and I mean, it's quite interesting when you actually draw something out, because you do get a lot more sense of what that photograph is kind of telling you. So for this one, we've been doing lots of sketches of sort of traditional Persian dress and all the beads that they had, and yeah, it is interesting when you sort of sit down like that. But yeah, and then some of it's just, so I think I should probably explain the chair backpack that I have.
Yes, I was coming to that. Please do. Yeah.
So that one was basically, I was looking online for sort of old vintage backpacks from 1910. And I didn't realise they were so expensive. So they're kind of like £800 to £1,000, like a proper old vintage one. So I realised they were just made of sort of old oak or whatever wood it was. And I had this picture of one, and I basically just sort of made my own out of a chair that I found on the street. And it literally looked exactly the same. And then when I got to India, I just put the basket on it. So again, it's a bit of sort of mishmatch, matching it all together, just making sure all the materials are the same, because actually a lot of the stuff from these early eras won't be around anymore. So yeah, it's just sort of mishmashing it all together, I suppose.
I wouldn't imagine that would be terribly comfortable to carry on your back, but you had a thick coat over it, right? Over, between back.
Yeah. So
some protection, but wood must be awfully uncomfortable to carry for any distance.
I mean, yeah, I wouldn't recommend it, but I was actually surprised. I thought it would completely destroy my shoulders, my arms, and I definitely had sort of a lot of rubbing. But like you say, it was so cold up in the Himalayas that I just had so many layers on, like woolen layers, that I didn't really feel the backpack. And it was just tied on with thick bits of rope. So, I mean, obviously it's not as comfortable as the modern day one, but I was pleasantly surprised actually. And the boots as well. I didn't seem to get as many blisters as I thought I would. So yeah, I mean, obviously not 100% practical, but definitely better than I thought.
Yeah, I was thinking about the boots that you were wearing, and by modern standards, they would be very uncomfortable to wear leather and leather soles, of course, and not entirely safe, I would imagine, in some of the surfaces that you were encountering. So you would dress up like this once you got there, and how long would you go for wearing those clothes, Elise?
So I wear them for the entire trip. I do it as these women would have done. So I kind of, as soon as I get to my start point, I'll put them all on. And like I said, it's just to show the extra things that they had to deal with. So obviously they had to deal with the actual challenge that they were doing, but also the clothing, because quite often, the men were allowed to wear trousers and all this stuff. These women, they weren't allowed such easy clothing, I guess. You see all the pictures of Scottish women climbers from like the early 1900s, and they're climbing in their petticoats, and it's just crazy to think that they had all those other pressures and then the clothing on top. But yeah, that's it.
Of course, it wasn't just the clothing and the backpack that you were having to endure over these distances and this terrain and these climates, but also the camping wouldn't be as convenient as it is today. What did you have to take? What was available in those days?
So they have, I guess they're called canvas tents. So they're super, super heavy. So that was another thing that I find with all this equipment. It's so heavy, and especially when it gets wet, it's just really, really unpleasant. And the tents actually were fine. They weren't that different sort of once it's up to a modern day tent. I mean, they blow over a lot more. But in India, actually, when I was in the mountains, I just, in the end, just slept curled around the fire every night, which I think is probably what Alexandra would have done as well. So yeah, it's kind of a bit of both. And yeah, in Scotland as well, the wind there is kind of crazy, and I didn't really realise it would be quite that bad. So there was a lot of tent blowing down. But yeah, just really heavy canvas tents. And that's what I'd say about all the equipment. It's just very heavy and slippy. I tend to slip over a lot.
Now, what about food and water? How much were you able to carry, and what would you have eaten?
So I do what they did, and I just kind of get food along the way or carry what I need till I know that I can get some more from the next place. So Alexandra just stopped in sort of people's houses along the way and just, bought food off people that she passed, which again is what we're going to do when I do the next trip in Iran. So we're just going to stay with families along the way, exactly as they would have done, back in 1920. So it's never as, I don't have to carry that much food. I just kind of make sure with my planning that we can get enough as we go.
So you're planning now, as you say, for journey number 3 to retrace Friar Stark's steps. But so this is something obviously that you're cataloguing and journaling in a different way too with these adventures. You wouldn't have a camera, would you? It would all be paper and pencil, I would imagine, as you log your journeys.
Yeah, it is interesting what they had back then. So Friar Stark actually had a camera. So this trip was 1930. Right. And I'm always surprised when things, were around, especially things like Vaseline. I always Google everything. I'm like, oh, I could take this. I wonder what they had then. I'm always really surprised by actually how long, there's things been around. I know this one sounds silly, but, matches. Because I thought I'd be having to make, quite naive, I thought I'd have to make fire by stick and stone. But no, matches have been around for a very, very long time.
Well, that's good. That's one convenience for you. So in terms of, a kettle or creating the fire, and did you have a pot, or did you rely on eating when you got close to the villages each time? Or how much were you eating as you were camping?
Yeah, we ate lots. So we had kettles. Actually, Alexandra always wrote about her 2 hot water bottles that she had as well. So I had hot water bottles. It was luxury. And yeah, we had kettles.
Those hot water bottles would be very different to what they are today, though. I mean, today they're rubber. Yeah, exactly. They might have been sort of animal insides or something back then. But yeah, it's really interesting. But yeah, we just had, obviously we had to have tea as we went. So yeah, we just had the kettle and the fire, and it's just so nice in a way, taking it back to sort of that very simple way of living. And again, I didn't have any modern technology to kind of distract me. So I was just sort of very immersed in, making the tea each night or just boiling the water. It was like the big activity for the day. And obviously all the walking. So there's something amazing about going back to that sort of very basic way of living. I can just imagine, really connecting with nature in every sense of the word. Now, you were journaling as well, were you, whilst you were travelling?
Yeah, I keep journals, as I go. And then I have actually have Emily who comes along and films it, because that's the amazing thing about today. These women didn't have any of the platforms. I always think this is really cool. They didn't have internet or things like that. So I guess it's another way that we can share their stories by kind of recording everything that we're doing. So yeah, Emily kind of films everything, and then I just sit there with my journal and my ink pen, penning away. And Emily is a friend or family? How did you persuade her to get involved with this? No, I was just looking for a female videographer, and I found her. She's kind of a friend of a friend. So she came along as well, and then she's come on all of them now, actually. She's too good for me now. She's BAFTA winning sort of director of photography, but I still managed to persuade her somehow to come on this trip. So yeah, she's coming again on the next one, along with the female guide. So it's always a really lovely sort of core group of women, and there's something really magical about having the team all women, I suppose. So yeah. So you have an official Sherpa? Yeah. So we had Django, who came on the first one, and then, which again, everyone said there's no female mountain guides in India because it's not a job that women do. And after a lot, it took me months to find her, but I did eventually find her. So they are there. They're just not as well known. And then this time around, we found some brilliant Iranian guides who are coming with us. So yeah, it should be really good. So tell us about this next trip in Iran, following in the footsteps of Friar Stark. Yeah, so we're going to recreate her most famous book called The Valley of the Assassins. She wrote over 30 travel books, actually. So she was quite well respected at the time. I found with a lot of these adventurers, these women, their writing's never taken that seriously. But Freya was actually one of the more sort of well-known ones. And The Valley of the Assassins was her most famous book. And she actually travelled there the Assassins were this very old sect that kind of was, formidable throughout history. And they were meant to be sort of quite dangerous. And even today, they're very entwined into modern life. So like Assassin's Creed, the video game, that's based on them. So yeah, Freya went to basically draw maps of the area for the RGS, but also she was an archaeologist as well. So to find all their castles and map all them and see what she could find out about them, basically. And yeah, it's this really beautiful big valley called the Alamout Valley. So yeah, we're basically going and retracing her journey through there. And just following her book again, really, and all the places that she talks about.
So what's the timeline for that, Elise, and how long do you think it will take?
So it's about 3 weeks. Basically, it's quite hard with a British passport to stay there for longer. And it's got to be all quite well organised. You can't just go to Iran and wander around like you could in another country. So it's all quite sort of strictly organised. So I've plotted the whole route now. So yeah, hopefully it will go quite smoothly. But yeah, so about 3 weeks for this one. Just following her footsteps.
And when is the start date?
So we're going in sort of end of April, so not long now. So I'm just sort of, crazily trying to get everything together on top of my other jobs as well. So yeah, it's always quite I always say it's harder to organise the trips than actually go on them. Once you're on it, it's obviously hard, but it's done. The hard bit's over, I always say, which I never thought would be the case.
So give us some special moments from the first two that you've done in India and in Scotland. What are the standout moments for you so far, that your biggest takeaways, Elise?
I think, so basically the aim for the India trip was to get up to, it's called Mount Kanchenjunga, and it's actually the third highest mountain in the world. Our aim was to get to sort of base camp area there, which is what Alexandra did, and she got her first views over Tibet, which then sort of started her obsession with trying to get into the country. So our aim was to kind of get there, and there were so many things that went wrong, sort of visas, weather, and all this stuff. And eventually we did actually manage to make it, and I never thought that we would. And it was just a really beautiful moment, sort of standing there, looking over at all these incredible mountain peaks, which wouldn't have changed. And that's the other maybe thing. In 100 years, I don't think that view would have changed. So we were literally having the same view that Alexandra would have had back then, it was a really, really special moment. I think the trip had been, because it was the first one, I didn't know what to expect, and it had been really, really hard. We'd all been really altitude sick. So yeah, that was probably a really, really special moment. And then I think for the other trip I did, it was just sort of learning I definitely came away from that trip a lot calmer. It sounds weird, but so when I first got there, obviously I have a really, really busy life in London. And because I didn't have any modern stuff to kind of distract me, I just sort of, when it got dark, I just sort of go to bed. When it got light, I got up. But in between, I wouldn't, apart from the walking, I wouldn't really know what to do with myself. And I sort of learned that it was fine, absolutely fine to just sit still, while I was making my dinner or looking out, and just take in everything that was around me. And that's what Nan actually writes a lot about in her book, just sort of being at one with the mountain and the environment that you're in. So I learned, honestly, just sort of relax, I suppose, and just sit and just take in everything that was around me with absolutely no distractions. I guess a bit like meditation, maybe. And I definitely feel like I've got a bit of that now in my life for good. I feel like I can just sit and do nothing, there's no pressure to always be doing something.
Yes, a very good message for us, and very good to have that still time, just be and enjoy your environment. Yeah. And I'd imagine it's quite a cultural shock when you do re-enter your normal daily life back in London.
Oh gosh, yeah. completely. I remember when I came back from Scotland, I got the sleeper train back, but I literally went straight from 3 weeks of being on my own. I mean, a couple of people came to meet me to do a bit of filming, but essentially I was on my own. And I just got the sleeper train back, and I didn't have room to put any modern clothes in. There was too much stuff, there was no room. So I pretty much got off the sleeper train at Euston Station at 7 a.m, still dressed head to toe in what I'd been in for the last 3 weeks. And yeah, it is really, you never think it would affect you, but it is really overwhelming. I know when I got back from India, because I've actually struggled a lot with sort of panic attacks and anxiety for the last sort of 10 years. And I really thought that maybe going on these trips would sort of fix that. But actually, every time I've come back, I think because it's such a culture shock, I guess, I find that I get very anxious and very panicky, and for at least a week afterwards. So yeah, there is quite a bit of having to readjust, because you are just fully immersed in this other life, and then it kind of hits you in the face when you get back.
Has it changed you as a person to the extent of, your daily living and your outlook on the world, on life, and how you would like to spend your life now, given these experiences? Yeah,
absolutely. And I think someone always asks me, why he's so drawn to these women, and I think it's slowly becoming clearer that actually it kind of scares me, the 9 to 5. I know when I first moved to London, I was just doing 9 to 5 every day, the weekends, go out, get drunk, and then it'd be the next week again, and it was really on repeat. And I've I think through this project, realised that I can't have that life, that life kind of terrifies me. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I've realised that that's not for me, and I will be unhappy if I do that. So I think maybe it's just sort of me trying to change my life so that I get more access to, different people, different places. And through these women, I guess I'm doing that, which is quite amazing. And I never sort of meant for it to sort of blow up this big, but I'm just going with it, and I'm super happy doing it. So yeah, I would say it's definitely changed everything.
Well, on to the third adventure. So has this made you ambitious to do more? Do you have, a list of pioneering women who you want to trace their footsteps in the coming years?
Oh, yeah, I have a huge, I think there's about 150 on my list, which is crazy. But this is the thing. There's so many women who did cool stuff all across the world from every continent. And again, no one really knows about them. So, the ideal, the dream would be if I can just do that. Obviously, it's maybe one day, but there are so many. So I'm just at the moment trying to pick out the ones I think are like the most inspiring. But yeah, ever since that first trip, I've been researching and just found so many. And actually, people send me new ones all the time. I think whenever someone comes across a sort of adventurous woman, they send it to me, and I just whack her on the list. So yeah, there's so many. And yeah, I'm really excited actually to keep sharing all their stories.
So realistically, how many of these could you do in a year?
So this year, I'm hoping to do 3. Obviously, it all depends on funding as well. So I sort of write to companies and try and get funding. So that's how I'm doing the Iran trip. And then a bit of my own money goes into it. So if I can get the funding, I think hopefully this year I'll do 3. Because I'm quite lucky in my other work that I freelance. So I do have a chance that I can do it. And they're just so big to organise. I think 3 might be the maximum. But yeah. It's been 1 a year so far.
So who are the next 2 then after Freya?
So there's a woman called Dora Neale Herson who's more of an author, but she actually sort of explored all of America and the Caribbean in search of sort of the secrets of voodoo. And she wrote a book called Their Eyes Are Watching God. And it's actually it's one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. It's amazing. And she was never famous when she was alive, but actually her writing now inspires so many people. But yeah, she writes about her sort of journey through Haiti and all these places, sort of searching for the secrets of voodoo. And it's just, her story is so cool. Like I'd love to do that one. And there's also Grace O'Malley, who's a pirate queen from the 1500s. So firstly, that outfit would be amazing. I would love to dress as a 1500s pirate. And she's amazing because she kind of survived history. So the monks would write out a lot of women who were powerful or stood up to society. But she had this really famous meeting with Queen Elizabeth. So she rowed her boat from West Island across the Channel and then up the Thames to Greenwich. And an absolute dream of mine would be to recreate that journey and get an old gully boat and fill it with a group of women and row that sort of same course that she did. So they're the next two that I would love to do. So we'll see.
Yeah, you said you were filming this. You had someone, Emily, coming along to film it all. But is there a book in this in the future? Are you, with your journals, hoping to piece them all together to produce a book at the end of these?
Yeah, I would love to, yeah. Yeah, I'd love to do one. And I think as well, just maybe a bit of my journey, but also just a book, with all these women in, because there are a lot of books that, are female adventurers from the past, but they're not very diverse and they're all sort of one sort of type of person. So I think maybe my adventures entwined with, what these women and I guess the lives and societies they left behind that I find really interesting as well. So yeah, I'm hoping maybe at the end of this year I can start that. I've been writing bits down, so let's see.
Well, it's a very brave endeavour, what you're doing, but what fun to be able to celebrate these intrepid female explorers, Elise. So congratulations on what
thank you.
And the very best of luck with the next one. We'll be following you on social media, of course, to see how it goes, and maybe we could get you back on the show at the end of the year.
Yeah, definitely.
And we can talk about this year's adventures.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, take care out there. Enjoy all the experience. It must be absolutely fabulous to witness all this. And I'm glad you're cataloguing it and filming it and so on and really doing justice to these women. So stay safe and take care. Good luck. And thank you very much for taking time to come on the show, Elise.
Thank you. You too. Thanks for having me.
And you can follow Elise, of course, on social media and by visiting her website. We'll have links to all of those on our website with the show notes accompanying this episode at wisports.com. And whilst you're online, do check us out on social media. Leave your comments, questions and suggestions for guests. We always love to hear from you. That's at Wisports on your social media channels. And if you'd like to reach us directly, our email address is info@wispsports.com. And whilst you're on your podcast app, do check out all the other shows that we do here at Wisp Sports. There's something for everyone. And we would love to get a review from you if you have a moment, or just leave a 5-star rating or drop us a line under the reviews, because that always helps others find the show. Until the next time, I'm Chris Stafford. Thank you for listening.